How you doing, YouTube? Matt Massive Beer Reviews. Back with yet another review of a beer I've reviewed before. And I will review again. But we're going to re-review it tonight. And that would be Funky Buddha. Funky Buddha Brewing. It's their 1972 Undefeated Saison. For those that don't know what this beer is about, it has to do with the Miami Dolphins. The only undefeated team in the history of the NFL. That's right. From beginning to end, they're the only team to accomplish that. And the old tradition for the Miami Dolphins players who are surviving from that 1972 season, they pop some champagne. Well, Funky Buddha wanted to do their kind of beer version of that, and that's where this beer kind of comes from. I have reviewed this beer, I think, pretty much for the past like 4 or 5 years. A year or two after I started my beer channel, I started as a co-host of a radio show, and through that we interviewed John Lynn. I believe at the time he was his marketing director for Funky Buddha, and after the show, kind of talked to him, explained what I did. And he's like, he's like, shoot me your address. We'll send you off some beers randomly here and there, and it pretty much followed suit for a while. Those beer mails kind of diminished, which is not, I'm not bitching, but this beer never did. They kept sending this beer every year, so it's kind of like a surprise, but not a surprise, but like also like a happy reminder of not just the 72 Dolphins, but how much I dig this beer. So yeah, I don't remember. I might have skipped 1 year on it. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, we are going to open this, and then we are going to drink it. Like I said, this is a brut base, so a brut kind of champagne base kind of Saison. No cork. Good, because I forgot my wine key. It's barrel aged with natural flavors, aged in Chardonnay barrels. Bottle conditions, serve at 32 degrees. I did not see this. This is probably 42, so poop on me for not doing this right. And 11.8%, so this is not a tiny beer. So I love grape musty beers, and that's how this one has typically come off for me. But it varies from year to year, being that's a wine barrel aged Saison. But it has that rich kind of darkness that you can only get, especially if you're dealing with a classic kind of Saison look. And label-wise, it's fantastic. The labeling, the whole 9 colors, very nice. And as far as that beer looks, I mean, look at that thing. I mean, it looks almost like apple cider you would find at like a farmer's market right around Christmas time. But there's the only way you're going to get that coloration from a Saison, unless you're going heavily malt driven, which I don't believe they do, is for some kind of adjunct in there. In this case, it's Chardonnay grapes, but you're like, wait a minute, Chardonnay is light. I think there's a heavy dose of grape must. That's always been my kind of assumption when it comes to this beer. But it looks like apple cider. Beautiful head on the top there, and just that murkiness kind of going on. Let's see if we can get a nose. And it really does kind of make me think of apple cider, but it leans heavily into kind of a little bit darker than what you typically expect from kind of Chardonnay grape kind of richness. It's definitely heavy grape forward, heavy grape pulpy mustiness in there. But the beer is without a doubt still in there. Soft tart acidity. I'm actually getting a decent amount of caramel off of this. I don't remember remembering getting caramel off that in previous iterations. But I kind of dig that. I wonder if this is like, it almost smells like to me, and I don't think this is the case, but it almost smells like to me like an aged bottle of one of the older vintages. Yeah, I mean, it says 1972 to 2020, so at least the label is new. But yeah, I like this. It smells like it's spent more time in the barrel. It's spent more time in the bottle. There's a lot of time involved in this beer, which is, you can never really fake. So that nice caramel in there, a bit of soft wood, a bit of soft vanilla, that huge grape component that's not overpowering, but very meaningful. Subtle tartness, nothing overly acidic, nothing overly sour. Get this little hair to drive me nuts. Done and done. It smells big and burly. Let's dive in. Cheers. There's a huge caramel component to this. I'm trying to think. What year is this one? 7.7%. I think this is the first one that John sent me off originally. I believe so. There's no date on this bottle, though. I should have wax marked this sucker, unfortunately. On this one that I'm drinking, and it actually looks like a actually small. I know they're 750s, but this one looks bigger for some reason, the one I'm drinking now. Anyway, the one I'm drinking now has the date of the undefeated streak for the Dolphins, which is 72-2020. Like I said, that bump up in ABV going from that 7% to 11% definitely comes through in a very interesting way, because this is very much kind of verging into kind of almost like old ale kind of territory for me. And I really dig it, to be honest with you. So you get this big, rich caramel component to it. It's not like super overly sweet. It's rich, if that makes any sense. And then it's like almost like a Werther's original kind of caramel kind of vibe, as opposed to like a sugar daddy kind of caramel vibe that marries super well with the way that kind of grape mustiness kind of comes off. The grapiness is big, bold, and big enough to stand up to that kind of rich caramelness. Now I know understand why this beer is the color it is, because like I said, it comes off more old ale wise. And for those that are like the kind of drive home in that sense, like traditional old ale, I know there's a lot of interchange between old ale and barley wine for good measure, but a lot of old school traditional old ale is open fermented. So while it's not a funky or wild beer, you can get these tart kind of acidic kind of undertones on these open fermented old school beers, and that's the way this one kind of comes off for me. More than a Saison. Sure, there's a little bit of pepperiness to it. There's a little bit of kind of like almost like a cardamom kind of coriander kind of thing going on, but it really leans heavily into that kind of caramel, Werther's original caramel kind of vibe with that big grape mustiness. It's a unique combination that works really well. I like this. It's probably one of the more aggressive versions of these beers. I mean, 3% jump in ABV kind of makes sense. It just makes me wonder if they're doing if this is. So I don't think that this is the one that they made years ago and they just rebottled it. I wonder if they're doing like a Solera method, pseudo Solera method on this, to where they're making a beer and then adding some of the original into it to kind of keep that chain going. That's just a curious thing I should reach out and ask. But it's delicious. Not what I expected. I mean, the ABV kind of tipped it off being a little bit different beer. But you think about a Saison and Chardonnay grapes, you would assume it would be something a little bit more delicate, a little bit lighter. Definitely not the case here. This is delicious. It tastes like a aged beer. I know I said that multiple times, and I keep saying it throughout the review. It tastes like this beer was bottled, in 2010. And now we're opening it now. The way that caramel comes off. There's no real oxidation in the beer. There's a little bit of like aged hop vibes in this. Almost like they use like old hops in it on purpose. But I don't really get oxidation off the beer. It's just this nice rich kind of caramel. A big grapey component. Super beautiful mouthfeel. The little bit of vanilla in it, a nice bit of dryness, probably from both the yeast and the way that kind of oak from those Chardonnay barrels kind of come off. This is tasty stuff. I don't know what I'd classify it as, though. If I really wanted to break it down and be like, this is this kind of beer, if I had to kind of pull it out, I'd talk about that old ale kind of vibe, like a grape wine Chardonnay barrel-aged old ale is kind of how it comes off to me, and I think that's a beautiful thing. Quite a bit off than the Saison portion of the show. It's called Undefeated Saison. I was saying they call it an ale with natural flavors and aged in Chardonnay barrels. I wonder what those natural flavors are. I'm kind of curious about that, but I think this is fantastic. Very hard to categorize, but very tasty. Like eminently, infinitely, undefeatedly tasty. Who would have thought it? And it's a nice little kind of capper on the NFL, for the end of the year. Typically when the last team loses, they send these off, and I get them, and it's before playoff time. But I got this probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, so right after the playoffs started. And I just wanted to find the time, be in a mood to drink it. And now that the Super Bowl just passed, we watched a really great defensive performance along with an insanely record-breaking bonkers, without a doubt, almost horrific referee performance that just goes to show you, no matter what you do, you can't beat a good defense and in your pocket referees. And just puts a nice cap on the season in a really tasty way. So thank you very much, Funky Buddha and John, for sending this off. Very tasty stuff. So anyway, let's talk about this beer. Is this one of the better Saison I've had as of late? It's weird because I wouldn't even classify it as Saison, so let's push that off to that. It's one of the better barrel-aged beers I've had as of late. Now we're talking. Definitely in the conversation. Is it Mount Rushmore status? I don't know. But it's worthy of being close to the top, if not up there. It's one of the better old ales I've had as of late. I'm going to shoehorn it into that category. Old school stylings, old ales that I've had as of late. It would default towards the top because I don't have a ton of them, but I think if you put it up against a bunch that I've had over the years, it would. It's just tasty, malt driven with that cool, funky grape, Chardonnay kind of twist to it, and a very beautiful beer. I think it's fantastic. So, yeah, it's delicious. What else? Value and availability on this thing. No idea. Like I said, it gets sent to me every year, so I'm assuming this is going to float between $18 to $30 a bottle. I don't have a problem with that, especially at this ABV. Leave you with, if you like, what will you like this beer? If you like undefeated, the only undefeated in the history of the NFL, Miami Dolphins, or just undefeated teams, perfection. Who would have thunk it? I'm an Arsenal fan and I'm a Dolphins fan. It's like undefeated, can't get away from it. Anyway, but yeah, if you like rich kind of old ales, if you like Saison, but on the darker side, if you're a big Grape Must fan, and you like fun, well-made beers, you'll like this. So there you go. Another review in the books. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Down there, if you want to talk about it, Massive Beers. If you want to check me out doing the social media stuff, Beer Massif. If you want to check me out doing the whole podcasting thing, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the review. Hopefully enjoying a little bit of Undefeated right now. Hopefully see you next time. Cheers.